Hello, everybody. Emily here, and we're just waiting for Dallas to join us. I'm just gonna go find her a second. Send her a quick message. All right. So, welcome to this Because She Dared to Get Visible series. So, you're starting a God dream, a business, a book, a blog. You feel like you're new on the scene, or just your new thing feels exciting and it's a learning curve. And so, let's talk about ways to get visible. So I'm your host, Emily Grbatin, author and coach for purpose-driven entrepreneurs with God Dream, ready to move from scattered and scared to calmly productive and visible. And so we are, we are bringing on... So welcome, if you're watching, say hi so we know you're here. And here she is! Yay! How
Hi,
are you?
I'm good. Can you hear me okay?
I can. There you go. It's great
We
to
kind of
have
coordinated
you.
today. We're both wearing green. I love it.
I know, this is great. All right, so we have here Dallas. Dallas, you are, I was looking over your acclamations on your website, and that would take up our entire call just for everybody watching. You should go just check out her acclamations of just her long list of why basically I'm having her here today. Um, so you are a podcaster, which is not the top of your list. You are a book coach, and you like to say a book doula. You're the author of, is it 4 books and 1 in birthing stage? Is that
Yes.
technically true right now? And yeah, and then so much writing experience and interactions, and um, you're the founder of our Young Writers group. Like, you've got lots of experience on your belt from all kind of angles and sides of the book industry. So I'm really excited to talk about. Plus, you had a really key role. I was telling people on my book is Dare to Decide. And when I was stuck in just the beginning stages, you were like the stranger angel that kind of appeared out of nowhere and totally inspired me to keep going. I don't know where my book would be if you hadn't had that courage to reach out. So I'm grateful for you too on a personal level. So just so you guys know, I actually have Dallas's book right here, one of her latest ones. I was part of her book launch earlier. So that was exciting. So darling. So Dallas, let's start off the conversation with, tell me, because I'm calling the series Because She Dared to Get Visible. So tell me a time of when you dared to get visible, even though you felt resistant or scared, and now you see it totally paid off.
I love this question. Well, I want to say, Emily, first, thank you so much for having me. It's always such a delight to chat with you. I remember when you were a guest on my podcast, I just felt like we could talk all day. I just have such a connection with you. I don't even remember exactly how I found you originally. I remember reaching out. I just feel like we were just brought together, and I love Dare to Decide so much. And it just really means a lot to me that I played some small role in getting your book out in the world. Well, I want to say, I'll share another story, but for me, one big thing about getting visible is being willing. Hey, Beth, my friend, Beth, who just joined, Beth Buck. She was my editor for Thanks, Carissa, the book that you just showed. So nice
That's
to have her on.
awesome.
But I think one big thing is just willing to be imperfect. Like today, Emily, I haven't told you this yet, but I have a 3-year-old daughter, and she's homesick from school today. And so I feel like just being visible right now with you, like having her in the other room, hoping that she'll stay preoccupied. She might come in. I have this like new toy to give her if she like wanders in during this thing. But I think we often put blocks on ourselves about something having to be perfect, whereas actually like it's real life and people understand. And I think part of just being brave to be visible is just like kind of embracing the imperfection of it and embracing like the, real life around it. I'm trying to think of a specific example. I would say, well, with birthing your book into the world, I think so much of it is like being visible about your book, like many times, being willing to be sharing about it over and over again when like you might kind of feel like a broken record. But it's because you are so immersed, you've been immersed in the world of your book for often years, before it's even getting published, that sometimes you get to the point of sharing about it and you just feel like you've been living this, immersed in it like so long, and it can be easy to forget that other people are just hearing about it for the first time. So I would say with my novels in particular, like Thanks Carissa for Ruining My Life, my latest novel, I worked on it for 10 years before it was published. And so it was like the characters were so familiar to me, and at times I almost got like tired of the story because I'd read it so many times that I think we can almost have blocks of ourselves of like, oh, well, should I really be sharing about this again? Like, are people going to care about it? But then you have a new reader who sees your, 10th post about the book and decides to pick it up and loves it. And it's just like, you just have to remember that with every time you're getting visible, you're reaching, new people who might be looking exactly for your book.
Yeah, I love that. I loved it when I read that post a while ago when you said that you'd written it ten years ago. And that, um, I think it kind of blew up my world inside a little bit because all of a sudden you were relatable because I have friends and acquaintances when we were teenagers in our 20s where we dreamed of writing a book. We've been writing our novels and mapping it out. It was everything we talked about for years. And, for a lot of us, those are still sitting on a shelf. And some of them have kind of like, it's not a dream anymore. Others are still working through it. And for me, that wasn't the book that I got published, was the ones that I dreamed of one day. So to hear that, oh yeah, like what it took for you to get from, that first draft to reading it so many times to now it's published. We don't know all of those behind the scene things. We just assume it comes so easily for somebody. They were the
Yeah.
lucky one, right? Yeah. So it wasn't my original question, but tell me kind of what were some of the stages it took for this book to kind of see the light for everybody to, for me to be able to hold it in my hands today. What was the journey that it took?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And it's so true. I think with everything, with visibility, we're so used to seeing the highlight reel of other people, and we don't see all of the blood, sweat, and tears, that went into that. So one thing I've learned that also might be helpful for listeners is that, like, as you're touching upon, Emily, the order that you write your books is often not the order in which they get published in. And
Mm,
just because you have a manuscript that maybe hasn't gotten published yet and is in your drawer, it doesn't mean that it's never going to be published. I think often, timing is so important, and so it's just funny sometimes to see, like for Thanks Carissa for Ruining My Life, I originally started writing the book when I was in grad school, getting my master's degree in fiction writing, and everyone around me, and myself included, were writing like very serious literary fiction was kind of the tone of the program, which I enjoy that as well. But I also just I love young adult fiction. And so this was kind of like my secret fun project that I would work on late at night, really just for myself. And it just went through multiple drafts, multiple iterations throughout the 10-year journey. I think I had 3 different literary agents who tried to sell it, and it got close, but didn't quite make it. And I just always kept going back to it. Like, I'd have it in my drawer, I'd move on to a new project, but just the characters really were dear to my heart. And I almost just I just kept seeing like, there's something here, I think I want to try it again. And so, and each time I went back to it, I feel like I would make it better. Like I would, because my journey too, as a writer, it's like we're always learning and growing. And so I do think it's a much better book than it was 10 years ago. And so I remember it was I guess it was 2 years ago during the holiday season. And I came across this great publisher, Immortal Works, because I had read some of their other young adult books that I loved. And I didn't have a literary agent anymore at the time, but they accepted unsolicited manuscripts. And I thought, I'm just going to send it to them. You know, like I might as well try one more time. And they were the right fit. They were the ones who wanted to publish it. And so I think that often something else to remember is that it only takes one yes, right? I think we often get a lot of no's in the writing world, and it's so normal, just really normalizing, like every writer gets rejections. It doesn't mean that your book is bad.
Yeah.
You can always learn from those, but then I think also just remembering like all it takes is one. All it takes is one, you know, to get that dream to come true.
Love that. Yeah. And so how long was the waiting period? Because your books were traditionally published, and there's so many different ways to walk the publishing route now. You almost have to kind of clarify each journey because each one comes with its own timing and expectation and process. So tell me, what was the kind of the timeline even for that to unfold?
Yes, and that is a big question I like to ask my clients when they're thinking about which publishing option to take. I mean, I think we live at such a wonderful time to be an author because there are so many options, and I think we really are in the driver's seat for our books. But I'm glad you touched upon that, Emily, because that's a huge difference generally between traditional publishing and self-publishing or hybrid publishing is the timeline. So it's very typical to sign a publishing contract. Like if I signed a publishing contract tomorrow, that book probably wouldn't hit the shelves for at least another year, very often like 2 years. It just takes a long time going through the whole editing process, and often there are other books sort of ahead of you in line with that publisher. Whereas for self-publishing, you have much more control over the timeline. You can publish it much faster. So yeah, that's something too. Like I actually have 2 more books coming out that I've signed the contract for in 2021, but they're not coming out until 2023. You know, so it is kind of a waiting period.
So someone looks at you and they're like, wow, how did Dallas? She's got, a little one in the works. She's juggling life, and, she's a coach as well. So she's got her, the other side of your business as well. And yet here you are, you launched a book right at the beginning of COVID, and then you had another one out this year, and then another one out in July, and now 2 more. It's like, wow, she must write like crazy and put them out. Well, that's not what's happened, right? You've put in the work, you refined your skill, you believed in your dream, you put it on the shelf, you took it back out again, you sent out your letters, and you just kind of worked it all of that time. So anyone watching, it's so easy to see and to make your assumptions of what's happening. And really, what's on the outside, what we see is very different from behind the scenes. So there's hope for that book that is sitting on your computer or on a shelf, or for me in a box underneath my desk in handwritten form. And so there's hope there. So tell us, what would be some of the prime times to start talking about the book that you have or start getting it noticed? Is there a difference between fiction and nonfiction? Does it matter if you're talking about it before it's written, while it's being written, or do you wait until you have that signed deal or the publishing plan and it's out ready in somebody's hands? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Such a great question, Emily. And I think like so much with writing, it's really a lot of it is dependent on, on each person, and sort of, so I want everyone to be thinking about as you're listening, like just your personality and especially motivation, like what motivates you. So there are some writers who it is like a huge step in their writing journey and very motivating to kind of make a declaration, like tell the world, or at least tell maybe a trusted group of friends and family that you're writing a book, that you're working on a book. A lot of my clients, it's like a huge kind of milestone we walk through together when they like really claim that identity of a writer, of an author. And there's also such great communities, like Twitter has a really strong writing community where you can chat with other writers sort of about your work in progress and just kind of feel like you're part of other writers. So I would definitely say, as far as owning that identity as a writer, it's wonderful to do that as soon as you feel ready. And so to say you're working on a book, you don't have to say what the book's about. And I think one thing is just important for you to think about as far as your own internal motivation is some writers find that the more they talk about their book, like the less inclined they feel to write it down, if that makes sense. And you
Yeah.
might, someone listening might think about like, well, yeah, that's true. I've talked about my book for years, but I haven't actually, spent much time writing it. So sometimes if you do feel like you talk about it a lot, you might actually try sort of having a period of time where you're not really talking about it and see
Yeah.
if it's more willing to come out on the page. So I think that really is kind of a personality thing. But I would say, as far as when you're looking for representation or if you've decided to self-publish, I think kind of the sooner the better as far as like telling the world about your book project. And you can even, I think it's always great to like get other people's ideas and perspectives and opinions. So for example, if you are on like Writer Twitter, or if you do a social media post kind of about basis of your book, maybe you are looking for a traditional publishing deal and somebody sees that post and they share with you, oh, I just saw this agent that I think is looking for books like exactly, like yours, you'd be a great fit. Or, if you're self-publishing, it can be great to get people interested. There's the common, I guess, adage in sales about like it takes 7 times before someone buys, like they have to see you 7 times. And I think the same is true with our books. It's really common to think like, oh, great, I'll do this one post and everyone will see it and they'll immediately go to buy my book. And I wish that was the way it worked. But often, especially if people don't know you, it's like they want to be seeing your book multiple times and kind of hearing about it. You might even think about your own buying behavior. For me, I definitely have some like automatic buy authors that I love, but often it's like, oh, I'll hear about a book and I'll kind of say, ooh, that sounds interesting, and then I forget about it, and then I like see about it again, and then maybe a few times later, then I finally order it. So I think a common mistake that authors make sometimes is thinking they have to wait until their book is available to start sharing about it, and that's definitely not the case.
Yeah. One of the common hesitations I've had from some of my beginning, I want to write a book friends is I'm not going to tell anybody about it because I'm afraid someone's going to steal my idea or, steal some of my work. Have you had that comment before? What would you say that kind of a realistic perspective on that would be for new authors?
I think that is such a common fear, and I'm glad you brought that up. And I think something really empowering to sort of remind yourself when that fear comes up is that like nobody else can steal your book because your book is inside of you and it's so tied to who you are. And so you might even think about like if you like to read different genres, like I think often in certain genres, there are so many stories that are sort of told over and over again, but they're all different because of the specific like flair and personality and experiences of the individual author. I read once there's an author, Joseph Campbell, The Power of Myth, where I think there were 7 different stories that we as humans just kind of tell, over and over again. But so what makes these books unique? It's not, I used to think, I remember when I was in high school, like first wanting to be a writer, I thought, I need to come up with this plot that's like never ever been told before, and then I would read a book that was similar and I'd be like, oh no, someone's already done my idea. Like, I guess I can't do it now. But then I realized actually it's my perspective, it's my voice, it's my experiences. Like that's what makes my book unique, and that's what makes people, want to read it. And so I think to me, that's really like an empowering way to address some of those fears of like, what if my idea gets stolen? I would also say that, I'm knocking on wood. I just think I think we're all interested in telling our own stories. And maybe there are some bad eggs out there who like want to plagiarize or steal, but I think in general, like most people that you're sharing with want to cheer you on. And if they want to write a book, it's like, it's going to be their own book inside of them. It's not going to be stealing yours.
Yeah, it's not going to have if someone's stealing it, it's not going to have the same heart as yours. Maybe they'll take an idea or words, but yeah, they're not going to pour all the time in it. It's a lot of work to put a book out and actually promote it and get it out there. And so, there will be a lot of work behind that. And on the other side, so and you're addressing even fiction. If it's nonfiction, I mean, how many times are we picking out books on the same topic because like we're gonna master that darn thing? If I want to build a habit, I'm gonna be reading like 3 books on a habit because I want to know all the angles. Partly because it's easier to read about it than actually implement it in your life, or you just want the different perspectives, and or you read one book and you're like, they mentioned another book, and you go down that bunny trail, right? You start adding all these other books to your Goodreads list. You're like, oh, they mentioned this book. Oh, they mentioned this book. Where did they get that? I've discovered amazing books from just one author mentioning them in there. And the other thing is, as a new author, you need all the help getting your name out. And so, just someone talking about it or like stealing some of your work, it's out there. Piracy is out there. But, the more you can spread the word, and sometimes it's negatively, but still most people kind of know if it's not real, I guess you could say. And so, I love the way that you've addressed that, how many times are we looking for books around the same genre or story theme, or like that template of, I like the way this character is wired. I like the loner woman ready to conquer things, grieving a past, whatever it is that you look for. I read the same kinds of books over and over. So I think that's so true. So any other tips for new authors out there?
Yeah, what else? Something else that came up for me too, as you were talking about, like, worried that someone's going to steal your work. I think also, as new authors, sometimes we like worry about giving our book away for free too much. Like, for example, for like advanced reviewers. And I would say, especially for new authors starting out, like, this is just your first book. This is just your first of many. And like, I believe that a big goal of your book is just to try to, get your name and get your book in front of as many people as possible. And so I personally tell my clients, and with my own books, I don't really limit like the number of review copies that I send out, like, especially in these days with like digital review copies, it doesn't cost anything to send it out. And so if someone sends me a message and they want to review my book in advance of its publication date, like, I'm so happy to send them one, because that's a question I get sometimes from authors, is like, well, if too many people have it, is anyone going to buy it? And I would just say, like, there are so many people in the world. You're always looking for new books, and just the more you can get your name out there. And I've also had many reviewers who they read my book and review it for free. And for reviewing, we're talking about reviewing it on their social media pages, posting a review on Goodreads, on Amazon, to really give you that social proof. So it's like you are getting something out of it as well. But a lot of them will then really like the book, and they want to buy their own, like buy a hard copy of it themselves too. So I think just like approaching it with this idea of sort of like abundance and just being so like, just so grateful for people to be reading your book, I think that does lead to more sales of your book too, when you kind of just have this like abundance mentality of, I'm so grateful for anyone who wants to read and review my book, particularly in advance of the publication date, to kind of start creating that buzz.
Yeah, the more people read it and love it. So first of all, it is important to take the time to write a really good book and go through all of those process. It can feel like it's such a long process, and maybe you want to shortcut it, or like, oh, I just want to get this out there. Don't shortcut it. Write a really good book. Bring your team on, be part of all that whole process, because when you write a really good book, in some, people who know what they're talking about can refine it and help you put it out there, then that's what people talk about. And that I think is one of the highest recommendations too, right? Is when someone and trust talks about a book that they love, and you're probably more likely to talk about it. So the more you can talk about that is going to increase your chances of getting known and seen too. So quickly, what would you say, just kind of list off, what are some of the key opportunities to take advantage of or position your book being noticed kind of along the journey? So say, as you're heading towards launching and publication, and then, and maybe in the first stages afterwards, what are some of those key opportunities that we should be alert about.
I love how you phrase that as opportunities. I think that's a great way to think about it. And also, I would encourage you, there are so many things that we all can do to kind of publicize our books, that I love the way you frame it as opportunities, almost like you have this buffet and you get to choose kind of the ones that really like resonate with you, as opposed to feeling like overwhelmed I have to do everything. I'll give a quick plug for my podcast, actually, because I have a podcast called Thriving Authors Podcast. And right now, as I'm going through my book launch, you had mentioned, Emily, that I have a book coming out at the end of June. I'm doing some episodes around like this very topic, doing some deep dives into different of these things that I'll mention. So if any of these like intrigue you and you want more of a deep dive into these elements, feel free to check out my podcast, because that's exactly what I'm doing right now, kind of like a real life sort of in my book launch. I always think about sort of the, I don't know, like the kickoff of your book launch. I think you can be talking about your book before this, and I think it's great to share if you get a publishing deal, like that's a huge thing to announce, or if you decide on a publication date for your self-published book, I think like announcing that. And then I think like the first big opportunity after that would be around the cover, like really revealing the cover of your book. It's become a trend on social media to do a cover reveal. And I think some authors just kind of bypass this entirely and don't really make like a big event out of it, which is sort of missing that opportunity. People love covers, and it makes your book seem so much more real, like once it has a cover. So that would be, I think that's like definitely a big opportunity. And then I think when your book is available for reviewers, it's called an ARC, like an advanced review copy. I think really making it clear, like reaching out to reviewers, doing posts on social media about like, I would love if you want to review my book, you can get a copy, like really trying to get reviews for that. And then when those reviews start coming in, you don't have to wait until publication date to share them, right? You can like really highlight them, highlight your favorite ones of those that come in. You can also reach out to other authors for endorsements of your book, and really highlighting those and sharing those. And then I like to do a pre-order campaign too. So something to try to encourage people to order your book even before the publication date. And this is great for a variety of reasons. One, I think like it helps people see that there's interest in a book when people are pre-ordering it. And two, it just really helps you as an author kind of start making like personal connections with readers, because often it's common to give special incentives if someone pre-orders your book, like you will send them a bookmark or some little goodie. And so for me, I know with my pre-order campaigns, like I've actually made some friends from people who have pre-ordered my book, and I send them the stuff, and they send me a picture when they like get it, and we kind of were able to form more of a relationship. And so I think that's a great opportunity to really kind of find like your close readers that you form relationship with. And then we get down to the actual like launch date. And I think even something as simple as like a countdown to your launch date can be really a great opportunity. I think we love countdowns. Like if I ever see someone's social media where they just have like 10 days, I'm immediately intrigued, like, ooh, what's happening in 10 days?
Yeah.
So I think just really, I think reminding yourself that your launch date is like burned in your brain, right? It's like your child's birthday. Like, that it's coming, but just for the rest of the world, it's just another day on their calendar. And so I think really making a big deal like of that launch day, counting down to it, reminding readers it's coming, and then on the actual launch day, really celebrating that. I love to send out little graphics to book reviewers and like my community that makes it really easy for them to share, that my book is out in the world and it's like the birthday of the book. And I think just really trying to really celebrate that day and kind of share about it, as far and wide as you can.
Oh, that's so good. Yes, so many practical things. And the deadline, just having a launch date in itself, deadlines prompt us they get our attention, they prompt us to action. And so maximizing that is in itself becomes this container that you can work with. And then of course after it's just a journey of continually making it the practice of sharing about it and weaving it into and I always thought like, oh, I don't want to sell, promote myself, like feel kind of shy or awkward about it. But the more I owned my book's message and realized, no, like, I know exactly who needs the, my book is not for everybody, and I'm okay with that. But I know who exactly it's for and who it will help. And I've had conversations in Starbucks or the barista who talking about it or saying, "Hey, yeah, I just went to see my book in chapters," and he gets all curious, right? Like he just met a real author, and I have no idea if he went and bought it like he said he was going to. But just that conversation to say, "Oh, I didn't feel shy at all because I'm proud of this thing." And if you're at this place that I talk about in my book, or this is what you enjoy, you're going to love it. Try it out. And you'll remember meeting the author and you're going to tell people about it. So the more you step into owning it, like you said, the first step is just owning yourself as a writer, as an author, saying, I'm doing this, and owning that and being proud of it and stepping into that. That's one of the first stages. And I think it's going to be hard to talk about it if any other stage beyond that, if you haven't owned that, even that identity in a sense. And
It's so true.
yeah, so great. So you mentioned your podcast, so just give us a quick recap on where they can find you. Is everything in your profile links that they can kind of find and navigate where to find your podcast, the Thriving Authors Podcast? And tell us what else. What else would you have going on coming up soon that you would love to invite some new authors into?
Yes, yeah, I would. And I loved Emily, what you were saying about just like meeting people and talking about your book. I always think it's great to have like a book, like some bookmarks with you, almost like as your business card in your wallet, or like some spare books in your trunk. Like you just never know when you're going to meet someone who would like love your book and would love a signed copy. I think that's such a great tip. So my podcast, the Thriving Authors Podcast, it's available pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. And it's also on, I have an Anchor website, anchor.fm /Dallas Woodburn, where you can find like the show notes and things like that. And then I'm also doing a free challenge next week, May 24th through 26th. That's called the Clear the Way to Write Challenge. So it's helping people clear physical blocks, emotional blocks, and what's the last one? Physical, emotional, I'm blanking. I guess like maybe time blocks. I'm totally blanking on the last book. Anyway, 3 like areas of blocks for just kind of like clearing that space to kind of open up your writing. And a lot of us, I find, we have kind of clutter in like all of those areas, but sometimes one more than others, that after the 3 days, it seems like, just from when I run this challenge in the past, people just feel like a lot more like lighter and more excited to get to their writing. So it's a great way to kind of head into the summer for a summer of writing. And so it's totally free. You can register. There's the link in my bio. If you click on it, it's just bit.ly/clear the way to write. So yeah, I hope that if anyone is interested, I would love to see you there next week.
Great. Yeah. So definitely do that. And if you aren't following either one of us, go ahead and follow us for more tips on authors and visibility and books from Dallas. For me, just inspiring you to dare to step into your God dream, to get, just confident in getting visible if you feel like you're first getting out in the scene or getting back into it. That's kind of the conversations we've been having on our social media lately. And so either one of us, give us a follow, tag along, join the conversation, and then, send us, even if you're watching the replay, we'd love to know what your takeaway. What was the thing that stuck with you, that stood out to you, that you're going to chew on for a while from this conversation? We would love to know that. So thanks, Dallas, so much for hanging out. And you made it without tuning in any distractions that I saw from your little one. She snuck in.
I thought she might be coming in, but she did great. Yeah, thank you so much, Emily, for having me. This was such a treat. And also, I just want to give a plug. I can't recommend your book highly enough. I just love it. I love it, and I feel like it's just such an amazing resource. And I love your voice so much. So I hope listeners, if they haven't already bought it, that they check it out.
Thank you. Well, we'll see you around, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Bye.